in this linear congruence with two variables. First of all, let's check whether it has solution or not. And to check the solution, we're going to look at the greatest common divisor of 2, 3, and 7, right? And then make sure that it is a number that divides the right hand side of the congruence, so which it does divide 1. So therefore we have solutions. Now how many solutions are there? Because now this time D is equal to 1. 1 divides C, which is 1. Then there are D times M incongruent solutions. That means there are 7 in this case. We have solution exists, right? Solutions exist. And actually there are 7, total 7 solutions. Now, how do we actually find that? Method number 1 is always trial and error. And I can do that because this time this 7 is not too bad. It's pretty small. What numbers I would like to try? I'm going to create a table because each value of x, I should have a value of y. So they come in pairs, right? I'm going to say here my x and y. X can be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are all the possible values that I have. For each value of x, I just need to solve for y. So in other words, when x is 0, my linear congruence becomes 2 times 0, which is 0. So 3y congruent to 1 mod 7. We discussed this type of problem earlier. You could use like trial and error and then try to multiply the inverse of y to get to find the solution, right? So I'm going to try to multiply both sides by 5 this time. Congruent to 5 mod 7. And 3 times 5 is 15. 15 mod 7 is just 1, which means y is just congruent to 1 mod 7. So therefore I know this is a pair of solution. When x is 0, y is going to be 1. Now when x is equal to 1, let's just solve that consistently. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 3y congruent to 1 mod 7. We just simply plug in 1 in here and try to solve this new linear congruence. This gives me 3y congruent to -1, right? Just subtract both sides by 1. Actually, wait a second. You can do that, but how about let's do this? Add 5 to both sides. Add 5 to both sides. The reason is when I add 5, 2 plus 5, which is 7, is congruent. It is congruent to 0. So therefore, my solution becomes 7 plus 3y congruent to 6, and this is actually congruent to 0. And I can do a division. Divide this by 3. So y is congruent to 2 mod 7. So therefore this is 2. When x is equal to 2, let's plug in 2 here. 2 times 2 is 4. 4. We have 4 plus 3y congruent to 1 mod 7. Similar trick can be used. I can add both sides by a 3 so that this becomes 0, and here this is 4. I have 3y congruent to 4 mod 7. And we already see that when you have 3, you just multiply by 5, it will create a 1 because the inverse of 3 is 5. So I'm going to say, therefore 5y is congruent to, let's do one more step. Multiply both sides by 5, so 15 congruent to 20 mod 7, which means y is, this is congruent to 1, right? Y is congruent to 20, and then you take away multiples of 7, which is 14, so y is 6. So therefore I know this is 6. And similarly, you continue to do this similar work. When x is 3, then you have 6 plus 3y is congruent to 1 mod 7, and then I would add 1 to both sides, add 1 to both sides. Therefore I have 3y congruent to 2 mod 7, multiply both sides by 5, so I have 15y, which is congruent to 1, congruent to 10, so which is congruent to 3 mod 7, right? So therefore I have 3 here. And then when x is equal to 4, then 8 plus 3y congruent to 1 mod 7, because 2 times 4 is 8, and 8 is congruent to 1 mod 7, right? And 1 and 1 can cancel, you subtract both sides by 1, so therefore 3y is congruent to 0, which implies y is congruent to 0. So y is congruent to 0 mod 7. So therefore this is 0. When x is equal to 5, 2 times x is 10, plus 3y congruent to 1 mod 7, and this is congruent to 3, and then you probably can add both sides by a 4, so that 3y is congruent to 5 mod 7, and again you multiply both sides by 5, so y is congruent to 25, and you take away 21, which is congruent to 4, so therefore this has to be 4. Lastly, when x is 6, 2 times 6 is 12, plus 3y congruent to 1, and now we are gonna add both sides number 2, so that this is 14. 14 is just gone, right? So 3y is congruent to 3 mod 7, and which means y is just congruent to 1. Divide both sides by 3. So that's one way to solve that. You do see that there are 7 solutions. I'm going to present another way, which is we use Diophantine equation, just solving Diophantine equation in a separate video.